NASA confirms solar maximum. We have to brace for massive flares and epic geomagnetic storms, according to space weather. We have another geomagnetic storm watch, G1. Minor G1 class geomagnetic storms are possible today, October 16th, due to a coronal mass ejection now en route to Earth. It was launched from sunspot AR 3854 October 11 and is expected to deliver only a glancing blow, thank goodness. And we're watching SOHO cross the comet's orbital plane. Like Earth, the solar heliospheric observatory SOHO crossed the orbital plane of the comet Tucson Atlas on October 14. And this movie is from the spacecraft's coronagraph showing what happens. The diagonal band of light is comet dust, just scattering sunlight into the coronagraph's camera. When SOHO crosses the orbital plane, the band shrinks into an exquisitely thin line. Imagine flying a spacecraft through the rings of Saturn and seeing them edge on. Something similar happens to SOHO. Here on Earth, we saw the thin line as well. It was the anti-tail sticking out of the comet's head, and you can see it in the amazing movie from Lorenzo Camoli of Sicily, Italy, taken at the same time as SOHO's movie. Comet Tucson Atlas has definitely lived up to the hype, according to space weather. Now, the bracing for massive flares and geomagnetic storms, as NASA confirms to us, because we are in solar maximum. NASA and NOAA have declared the sun's solar maximum, noting increasing sunspot activity and heightened solar events that influence Earth's space weather. This period is linked to significant geomagnetic storms and aurora displays, with potential disruptions to satellites and communication systems. Solar maximum announced by NASA and NOAA. During a teleconference on yesterday, officials from NASA and National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the International Solar Cycle Prediction Panel declared that the sun has entered its solar maximum period. This phase, characterized by heightened magnetic activity, could continue for the next year. The solar cycle is an approximately 11-year period which the sun oscillates between periods of low and high magnetic activity. At the cycle's peak, the sun undergoes a magnetic flip where its magnetic poles reverse positions, akin to Earth's north and south poles switching places every decade. This transition marks a shift from a quieter phase to one of intense activity and frequent solar storms. Sunspot monitoring and solar activity. To monitor and forecast the stages of the solar cycle and ultimately solar activity, NASA and NOAA track sunspots, which are cooler areas on the sun's surface. These spots arise from concentrated magnetic fields and are key indicators of the sun's more active regions. These regions of intense and complex magnetic fields are not only visually striking, but are also the origins of powerful solar eruptions, as we see here. During solar maximum, the number of sunspots and therefore the amount of solar activity increases, says Jamie Favors, Director, Space Weather Program at NASA, headquarters in Washington. He says this increase in activity provides an exciting opportunity to learn about our closest star, but also causes real effects at Earth and throughout our solar system. The solar cycle is a natural cycle of the sun, as it transitions between low and high activity. During the most active part of the cycle, known as the solar maximum, the sun can unleash immense explosions of light, energy, and solar radiation, all of which create conditions known as space weather. Space weather can affect satellites and astronauts in space, as well as communication systems such as radio and GPS and power grids on Earth. Now, effects of solar activity on Earth. Solar activity strongly influences conditions in space known as space weather. It can affect satellites, astronauts in space, as well as communications, such as radio and GPS. Then power grids on Earth. When the sun is most active, space weather events become more frequent. Solar activity has led to increased aurora visibility, northern and southern lights, and impacts on satellites and infrastructures in recent months. During May 2024, a barrage of large solar flares and coronal mass ejections, CMEs, launched clouds of charged particles and magnetic field towards Earth, creating the strongest geomagnetic storm at Earth in 2 decades, and possibly among the strongest displays of auroras on recent record in the past 500 years. From May 3rd through May 9, 2024, NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory observed 82 notable solar flares. The flares came mainly from 2 active regions of the Sun called AR 13663 and AR 13664. And the video highlights the flares classified at M5 or higher, with 9 categorized as X-class solar flares. Solar maximum, duration, and peak. This announcement does not mean that it's a peak of solar activity we'll see this solar cycle, said El Sayed Talat, Director of Space Weather Operations at NOAA. While the Sun has reached its solar maximum period, the month that solar activity peaks on the Sun will not be identified for months or even years. The scientists will not be able to determine the exact peak of this solar maximum period for many months because it's only identifiable after they've tracked a consistent decline in solar activity after the peak. But scientists have identified that the last 2 years on the Sun have been part of this active phase of the solar cycle due to the consistently high number of sunspots during this period. Scientists anticipate that the maximum phase will last another year or so before the Sun enters a declining phase, which leads back to solar minimum. Since 1989, the Solar Cycle Prediction Panel, an international panel of experts sponsored by NASA and NOAA, has worked together to make their prediction for the next solar cycle. Historical perspective on solar cycles. Solar cycles have been tracked by astronomers since Galileo has observed sunspots in 1600s. Each solar cycle is different. Some cycles peak for longer and shorter amounts of time, and others have similar smaller peaks that last longer. Solar cycle 25 that we're in now, sunspot activity has slightly exceeded expectations, says Lisa Upton, a co-chair of Solar Cycle Prediction Panel, lead scientist at Southwest Research Institute in San Antonio, Texas. However, despite seeing a few large storms, they are not larger than what we might expect during the maximum phase of the cycle. The most powerful flare of the solar cycle so far was X9.0 on October 3rd of October. X-class denotes the most intense flares, while the number provides more information about its strength. NOAA anticipates additional solar and geomagnetic storms during the current solar maximum period, leading to opportunities to spot auroras over the next several months, as well as potential technology impacts. Additionally, though less frequent, scientists often see fairly significant storms during the declining phase of the solar cycle. Future space weather research and predictions. NASA and NOAA are preparing for the future of space weather research and prediction. In December 2024, NASA's Parker Solar Probe mission will make its closest ever approach to the Sun, beating its own record of closest human-made object to the Sun. This will be the first of 3 planned approaches for Parker at this distance, helping researchers to understand space weather right at the source. NASA is launching several missions over the next year that will help us better understand space weather and its impacts across the solar system. This is on SciTech Daily by Abby Iturrate, NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. Please leave your comments and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.